everyone. Welcome to the parenting program, The Best You for the Best Them with Laura Cleary. My name is Julie Jackson, and I'm a librarian at the Mountain View Public Library. During today's program, we will be using the chat box for questions. So if you think of a question during the program, please go ahead and enter it in the chat, and we will take questions when we have time. Laura has also kindly offered to share her slides with you after the program. So I will email those to you in the next day or so. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker. I'm excited to have Laura Cleary join us this afternoon. Laura is an experienced licensed master social worker with over 15 years of dedicated service in youth and family social work. She's a parent coach, freelance writer, and currently working as a behavioral health coach for Headspace. You can find her blog and other information at her website, parentingthebigkids.com. She's also the mom of 3 young adults. Please join me in welcoming Laura Cleary, who will be talking today about self-care for parents and being the best you for the best them.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for that nice intro. And thanks for having me. And thanks to you all for being here today, taking the time. And so I'm excited to be presenting on this topic, the best for you, the best for them, how the emotional well-being of teens and parents are kind of intertwined, and why your self-care as a parent matters so much for you and for your child. Okay, so Julie kind of did this intro, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I bring all of my experience and education to my work and to this presentation. And as a parent of, having been through the experience of parenting teens, I also bring that to my presentation, but not in a way of like, this is the right way to do it, or I have all the answers. I come with like suggestions, perspectives, things for you to think about, and you take away what feels helpful for you and your family, because every family is unique. Parenting is really complex and sometimes messy, and there's just really no easy or simplistic answers. So I don't come to you saying like, I have the right way to do it. And so I know this one is really cliche, but I like to start with this slide because it's just so deeply true, that if you're gasping for breath or your tank is empty, you just can't, be there for your kids and your family and others in the same way that you want to be. As much as you sometimes like have the instinct to just go and help them first, this one is just like, you see it all over the place. If you search the, oxygen mask first for parents, you see tons of images and you see it everywhere just because it is so true and so important. So the impetus for this presentation was 2 things. I had written an article for a multi-writer blog that some of you might be familiar with called Grown and Flown a couple years ago about self-care for teens, for parents of teens, sorry. And how that's different than like self-care for when your kids are little, like 5-minute shower is self-care, and that changes as you're parenting a teen, and how that can be tricky to figure out. And I think Julie from the library saw that. And then also we kind of put that together with this research that came out from Harvard's Making Caring Common about the link between teen wellness and parent wellness. And then I just did a slide about this because it's like, it's nothing new and it's nothing surprising. And if I did like a really quick Google search, and it was just like tons of headings about this, right? Because it's just, a lot of people are talking about it. And this one at the bottom, Making Caring Common, the report they did, Caring for the Caregivers, the critical link between parent and teen mental health, is the one that was kind of like the base for this program. So here's just like, I know there's a lot of words on this slide. So this is just like the highlights of that Making Caring Common research. We'll touch on a lot of this as we go through the slides, and some of it may resonate more for you, but it's like parents and teens are both suffering from sort of equal levels of anxiety and depression. If your parent is depressed, you might be more likely as a teen to be depressed. This is good news. Majority of parents are attuned to their teens' emotional states, but some are not for lots of reasons. We don't do any like blaming or shaming with this. just stuff to think about. And teens who are depressed and anxious are more likely to talk to their friends than their parents. And that's not terrible, right? They're both valuable for teens to be talking to their friends is great support. But like, if they're not talking to you, then you don't know what's going on with them. And they can hide it pretty well. And then finally, teens want their parents to listen, even if it doesn't always feel that way. They're doing this job, a developmental job of like individuating, finding themselves, what values of yours do they want to keep, what values of yours they don't agree with. And it can feel like they don't really want you there, and they're not interested in having you listen to them, but they are. And I put this in the frame of like, this is not about ever feeling guilty or like one more thing for you to worry about. Oh my gosh, I didn't take care of myself well enough, so now my child's struggling. It's awareness and being open to growth. And that's why you're here. Like, you're here at this program, or you're viewing this program later, because you want to grow in awareness and you want to kind of figure out how to make this better, or you want to just like keep going the way you already are. And guilt, the thing about guilt is like, it's an emotion, right? So it's a signal. So if you do feel guilt, you can check it, just like you would if your child or your teen came home and they had been like mean to a friend and they told you that and they were feeling guilty, and it would be like, well, okay, what's there? What's the signaling you? Do you have something to repair with them? Is there something you're learning? So in the same way, I want you to take all of this in that way, right? Not blame or shame, just like, okay, if I'm feeling guilty about something, what does it mean? Is it just because I always feel guilty, or is there something here to learn? I try to slow down a little bit. So just put in the chat if I'm going too fast. I have a tendency, I'm from the Northeast, so we talk really fast. I like this. You've probably seen lots and lots of visuals of the circle of concern, influence, and control. There's so many if you Google it. And so the reason I put this in here for this presentation is that it's good to have clarity on this, because we can get very worked up about things that are out of our control, right? So there are things that will happen to your teen that you have no control over. And that will be good experiences, bad experiences. That will be, someone who's mean to them. That will be disappointment. That will be genetic things. That will be all kinds of things that will happen to them that you have no control over. And doesn't mean you don't care about them, but like having clarity that it's not in your control can take away some of the stress and anxiety. And then the thing that you have control over, and I'm not saying it's easy, but you do have control over your self-care and how, you take care of yourself or put some attention to that. And we'll talk about how that can be like a range of things. So, but you do have control over that. And you do have control about the boundaries that you set and how you respond to your thoughts. And again, that can be something you need to work on. And then influence is a lot where your teen is, right? Because it's an illusion that we have a lot of control over everything with our teen. And so the influence is where you can think about your teen sitting, right? You have a lot of influence. And we're talking right now in this presentation about how your self-care and your wellness will influence your teen's self-care and wellness. So from that Making Caring Common article, this is one of the conclusions they came to. Parents who practice self-care prepare teens to thrive. And they're not just saying like prepare teens to be okay, like they're saying prepare teens to thrive. And we'll be sharing this slide with this slideshow with you. So like you can look this over more. I'm not going to read them all, but it's just like some common sense things, right? You're role modeling self-care. You're teaching them some coping strategies, whether directly or just by them seeing you do it. They feel better when you are okay. It's scary for teens. You're their safety. It's scary for them, even if they don't tell you that when you're not okay, or when they see you overworked or too stressed or not taking care of yourself. And again, some of that's not in your control sometimes, but it's something to think about. I like this one about teens with parents living meaningful, enjoyable lives look forward to growing up. And we're going to touch on that more, but I think that's a really powerful one, that they kind of look to the future in a different way if they see you having a meaningful life. So as we go through, don't forget, if you have something you want to comment or question, please throw it in the chat and Julie will be watching that. And if you want to wait for the end to see what we cover, that's fine too. We'll have a little bit of time at the end. And then you have my email too, if you ever have a question you want to ask me. So this slide might see, so the thing about self-care is that it's like this word that gets thrown around, and some people hate it. Some people in like the mental health community hate self-care, the word self-care, because I think it's one word or two words. Because it gets so overused, and we sometimes have like beliefs that we bring to the idea of self-care, like from our culture or from our families. And it gets really complicated. So I don't want to complicate it or oversimplify it, right? It just means what it's individual for you, like what makes you like happy and maintains your physical, emotional, and mental health. And that can be so different for everyone and so different at different times of your life. And sometimes you forego a little bit of some of these things. I'm not saying this is not a list. This is not like a checklist, right? So sometimes you forego a little sleep because you have some important, finals or project for work that's very important to you, or you're caring for a parent or something. So it's not a checklist. And it's not just spa days or manicures. I mean, those are great. If that's self-care to you and you can do it sometimes, that's great. But it's just, it's what it is to you. And these things on this slide are more about like adding. Can you add to your life to take care of yourself? But I think it's important to understand that like self-care can also be about taking things away, thank you, from your life. So the old idea of like just saying no, right? So you're gonna like just prioritize things, maybe sometimes slow down. Maybe there was a period when you were always volunteering for everything at your kids' school and you really loved it and you loved to be a part of it. But right now you're caring for an ill parent and you have a lot of obligations at work, and maybe it's time to say no sometimes. So this is, again, very individual, not a checklist, just stuff to think about. And then again, that checking in, right? That checking in like, okay, right now, for now, is this important? Is this helping me live the life I want? Is this modeling good self-care? So what gets in the way of caring for yourself as the parent of a teen? Like maybe I'm saying all this and you're like, yes, I know all this, right? But you're not doing it. And I work as a behavioral health coach, and I work as a parent coach, but also I work as a behavioral health coach just for like general population of people. And this comes up so much of like, what gets in the way? Like you want to do these things, they are important. And so I always say like one piece of it is sort of really understanding the importance, like really saying to yourself, this is important. And so this could be a reminder, maybe this slideshow, and setting the intention, but like what gets in the way is important because then you can kind of problem solve. And so maybe when I was asking that question, you were thinking any of these, right? Like you're busy, you're tired, right? It feels selfish. Like there's so much to do. Like how can like me taking a walk in the morning be self-care? I don't even know what self-care is anymore. Like I hear that sometimes, like I don't even know what that means. And so, or like just feeling like at certain points in your life, the stakes are too high. Someone is ill, or you're trying to help your child get into college, or there's just some pressure and it just feels like slowing down to like add something or taking away something. It feels impossible. And these are all legitimate things. These are all fair, important to think about the obstacles so that you can kind of problem solve them and figure out like how to still do self-care, even in like really tiny ways. Sorry, I'm not. Oh, there we go. It made me click a couple times. Okay. So I like this idea of beginner's mind that some of you may have heard it if you've ever done any like mindfulness or meditation training. I was at a training with Rick Hansen, who's a psychologist. Some of you might know, who's a meditation teacher. He's really into mindfulness. He's also a Buddhist. And so he brings a lot of those ideas, and he talks about the beginner's mind, but it's not his idea. And I think I like it for a lot of things to bring this sort of curious, like, it's not like totally clean slate, but it's like, try to remove all these beliefs and shoulds and like all the other stuff and just come at it with curiosity. So I put this little baby, just like, what is self-care to me? What do I need right now? Like with this very beginner's mind. If you're interested in beginner's mind, you can look up more about it. It's just kind of freeing yourself from expectations. And I'm not saying like when you go with beginner's mind, you have to do everything that you think of, but it's just like a good place to start and just an interesting thing to think about. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of those points about like, just to reinforce some of those points that were made in that Making Caring Common report. So they talk about, self-care is so beneficial for your teen. It's not selfish, it's okay to be selfish. I mean, I'm not saying it's fine to be selfish sometimes, right? Like obviously some people can be narcissistic and tip too much, but like most of you probably are not. So there's nothing wrong with sometimes just being like selfish, you know, like, but in general, self-care isn't selfish because it has so many benefits for you and for your family and for your team. And there's even like a lot of evidence that just like taking the time for this stuff actually, I don't like to focus too much on productivity, but that it makes you actually more productive sometimes to take that break, to do that nice morning routine. Like I have just this super simple, now I don't have little kids at home anymore. So I don't have teens at home anymore. My kids are young adults and they're out living their lives. But, you know, I've just like have my coffee outside and do my Wordle every morning. And it's just like this base for me. And when I don't do it, I'm like feeling a little jangled. I'm like, oh, I didn't take that time. I was rushing this morning. So it's not selfish for me to do that, even if there's a lot to do, because it sets me up for the day. And your teens feel more secure when they know you are well and you're showing them how to be well. And the one that I mentioned before about showing kids that life can be meaningful and rich and enjoyable. And it doesn't mean you're showing them that it's like Disneyland every day for life, right? But if it's just like every day is just rinse, repeat, the job is terrible, I'm so stressed out. And again, it's not about guilt, but it's just like taking that time to reflect, like what are you showing your child about like what they're working towards as an adult, like what it means to be an adult in this world. And this doesn't mean you have to be like doing some like deeply meaningful things every minute of the day. But this is a really powerful thing that they said, that the finding, right? 36% of teens survey respondents said they themselves felt little purpose or meaning in life. And so I've seen those kind of stats. I've seen them in like reports about kids being talked to in schools. And it's like, we want to try to help them see meaning for themselves now. And we want to help show them that adult life can be meaningful. So doing things you love, like being part of things that bring you joy. And that doesn't have to mean that you like have some job that's super meaningful or you're volunteering every week for the, homeless shelter. It's just like, how do you do that? I mean, this is where you check in. How do you do that? How do you show them and encourage them to find that meaning for themselves beyond just like, what school am I going to get into? What grades do I have this year? Right. And, the checklist that can come with like trying in high school, especially in high achieving high schools, that you want to kind of like interrupt that just a little bit. It doesn't mean they can't do all that other stuff, but just like what's meaningful for you versus just like, what are you adding to your resume? Because this is a whole different presentation, but like they can have 100 great things on their resume and still not get into Yale or Harvard or whatever. So finding meaning is pretty important. And actually Yale has like a finding meaning course. That's like one of their top most popular courses. I live kind of near Yale, so I go to a lot of their stuff. I like just this self-care wheel. You can find examples of this all over the place. There's a million ideas on here, and I don't want you to try to worry about like, again, not a checklist, just kind of a cool way to think about like how you can separate self-care into categories. This kind of addresses that barrier of what do I do? What is self-care, right? It's just like ideas. I sometimes encourage people I work with to kind of create their own so that you can create their own categories. I mean, maybe spiritual is not important to you, you leave it out, or maybe, professional is not going on right now for you because you're a stay-at-home parent and you're not really interested in that at this moment in your life. So you can leave that out. And then ideas that work for you, and it kind of becomes like almost a template. Like, here's how I take care of myself, and it's changeable. And sometimes that visual reminder can be really helpful for some people. And then I really wanted to add this in because there's this, I don't know if you've heard of it, but struggle care is this phrase that was developed or created by this therapist, Casey Davis. She wrote this book, How to Keep House While Drowning. And she has a podcast and a website and a really nice social media presence if you're on like TikTok or Instagram. I'm on the mental health side of TikTok, and there's some good stuff there. So this is how she defines struggle care, is about learning how to accomplish care tasks and being kind to yourself when you have functional barriers. It can include grief, disability, overwhelm, mental health issues, like a million reasons why at a certain time of life, your self-care is going to be really simple, right? And it's okay. And I love this one, that care tasks are morally neutral, right? So it's like, that's fine if it's important to you to have a clean house, but it doesn't make you a bad person if your house gets messy. And that's fine if it's certain things are important to you. like about taking care of your house or your family, but like if you have to let it go sometimes, it's not a moral failure, right? So it's like just a cool way of thinking about the self-care at a really basic, kind to yourself level. And like even just rest is a right? I have people say like, they feel bad because they take a nap on the weekend, and it's like, that's your self-care. Like that's fine. So anyway, if you're interested in that, she has like a TED talk that's really good. You just can Casey Davis, How to Keep House While Drowning, Struggle Care is her really great podcast. Sometimes just, skipping the dishes, doing good enough on a project. I'm not saying that's how maybe you want to live your life constantly, but sometimes. Okay. I know I'm moving really fast, so don't forget you can drop something in the chat if you want. Okay,
I think
so
your pace is great.
Okay, good.
It's great. Thanks.
I worked hard to slow myself down. I come from Philadelphia and we talk fast there. And when I moved to California for a while, everyone was like, whoa. Okay. So another part of self-care that I think is important to mention is regulating your nervous system. And some of you may know more or less about this. And I'm trying to do like a crash course in nervous system regulation. There's tons of information, but I think keeping this frame in mind, outside of like the self-care of exercise and, eating right, there's this element of like keeping an eye on where you are with your nervous system. So you have your, so this is a model I really like. It's called the window of tolerance. It was developed by this neuroscientist, Dan Siegel. Some of you may have heard of him because he's written some parenting books. He kind of takes neuroscience and applies it to parenting in a really cool way. But anyway, he created this window of tolerance idea. That's why if you Google it, you will see lots and lots of images. And for me personally, and a lot of people I work with, visuals can be helpful. So if you find it helpful, you could find an image that you like and even print it out, or even just keep it in your mind. But it's just like this window of tolerance is where we're in like a safer, calmer, they call it the parasympathetic nervous system, where we just like think more clearly, we feel a little better, we're able to kind of make decisions, and just, I like to use really technical words like we feel less jangled. I always use the word jangled. So the idea is not that you would always be there. And also the idea is that it doesn't mean the window of tolerance is not like, I am so super calm Zen. It's because you don't want to be super calm all the time. Like moments right before bed or whatever, but like in general, you just want to be, they call it like rest and digest, where you can kind of feel in control. And, this word regulated, I like way better than calm. So, it's just the check-in idea, right? So how do I stay in my window? What do I need right now, right? Do I need to get outside for a few minutes? Do I need to walk around the office? Do I need to do a few deep breaths? Do I need a little time with friends? And so it's just that check-in and really modeling that for your teens. And so sometimes like in like typical life, you wouldn't say these things out loud, but like it can be a cool thing to model and even have up somewhere like, oh gosh, you know what? I'm just feeling kind of jangled right now. What do I need? A really powerful thing to model for your teen, and good for you, of course. All right. And so we talk in coaching a lot about building your toolbox. And I know, again, that's a little cliche, but I just think it's the perfect way to think about it. Like you need a lot of tools because you come up in a lot of situations, and maybe like you do some kind of stretching or movement to feel more regulated sometimes, but you can't do that in the middle of a meeting. So maybe then a grounding exercise would be more helpful, or a breathing exercise would be more helpful. And you want to have just a variety to choose from. So that's where you can, if you have a toolbox, great, just like keep that in mind. I sometimes recommend like writing it down. So you're not like, what was that breathing thing my brother told me it was great and I tried and I liked it, but what was it? You hold it for 3 seconds. And so just like keeping track, and that can change. Like I've had tools that I use to regulate my nervous system that I like. There's this one called the butterfly hug. That's like this bilateral stimulation, tapping on both sides, that I really love. And I've shared that with some people and they love it, and some people and they hate it. They're like, oh, that feels so weird. Whatever, it's your toolbox. Whatever feels supportive to you. So many tools, and like this presentation, there'll be a whole nother presentation about that, but also you can Google it. Google regulate nervous system. Vagus nerve is really popular right now. It's this really long wandering nerve, and stimulating that in lots of ways through touch and deep breathing. And it doesn't, most of it, it's like, it doesn't hurt you. So you can try it. And even if it seems weird, like humming can be calming. Like that's a weird one. That singing, doesn't matter. If it helps you feel a little bit more regulated, then it's fine and it's harmless. And again, not super calm. You're not trying to go from like an 8 of kind of feeling jangled to like a 1 necessarily, but maybe you can get to a 6 with some tools. So let's see, how are we doing on time? I don't want to spend too much time. I just was like, this is an example, tons of breathing exercises, you know. It's really cool if you even just search, there's lots of these kind of images. Headspace has a lot of like guided breathing. There's really simple breathing. There's this one I really personally love called the physiological sigh. It's just like 2 breaths in, one on top of the other, and then a long breath out. I just like that one. I don't know. It feels good to me and it's easy to do. So breathing is really one that not for everybody. And if you're in panic or something, breathing might make you feel too overwhelmed. But again, different tools for different moments. This is another really simple idea that I heard in that workshop with Rick Hansen, that psychologist and mindfulness guy. I'm sure he likes to be called a mindfulness guy, but anyway, I was in this workshop with him and he talked about this blue sky mind idea, which is, I think it's interesting. Some of these regulating things we do naturally. So like the idea is that when we're focusing on something, right, like reading or looking really closely at our computer, which we do a lot, or on our phone for a long time, and maybe getting a little tense because we're looking on social media and we're starting to compare ourselves with, oh my gosh, look at that teenager. He's volunteering at the homeless shelter and she just got into Harvard. And oh my gosh, their family looks so happy. And you get kind of like all worked up. So the blue sky mind idea is that you just use a different part of your brain to do that intense sort of focused. And then when you look to the sky or the horizon, you switch to a different part of your brain. And the cool thing is like neuroscientists can tell that now because they can look inside your brain. So it's just like a really simple thing. If you're feeling kind of stressed, if you're really needing a break, sometimes it can be just enough to just look to the sky, look to the horizon. We do it naturally. You know how good it feels like if you're out to like, if you're at the beach, especially to like look out at the horizon. So just really simple things you can do and explore. But I love that blue sky mind idea.
I'll just check in. You were asking how much time we have. We still have half an hour. So.
Oh, good. All right. So I'm going to not worry too much about time. We're doing good. So I can't do anything about self-care without talking a little bit about being present and mindfulness. And I do like to always throw this in because some of you are like, yes, I know all about this. I do this, but some people have like misunderstandings and it's a really powerful self-care tool. Maybe mindfulness teachers wouldn't want me to call it a tool, but like being present can be self-care, right? Because we're rushing through the days and we're rushing through our lives and, you know, we get caught up in our emotions. And so like, if we feel cranky in the morning or irritable, we take that cranky, irritable all through the day. And then come home and we're cranky, irritable, and our teen gets cranky, irritable, you know, so it's like just stopping and being present is a really powerful thing to practice. And it's really pretty easy to practice. Like you don't have to do full-on meditation. Like you can, that's great if you have a meditation practice. And I work for Headspace, so we like to promote meditation, but mindfulness is just the broad category. John Kabat-Zinn, who's written a bunch of books about meditation, but the first one I ever read was Wherever You Go, There You Are, that he wrote a long time ago. And he says, mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. That's it, right? I mean, that's not easy, but like it's a simple definition that I really love. And you can do it through formal meditation practice. There's something called mindful pause, where it's just like sort of intentionally pausing for mindfulness, which might seem kind of weird, but it's like a couple times during the day. I always check in the morning and do like a mindful pause. Maybe you link it to something you already do, like when I'm drinking my coffee, I do a mindful pause and I just notice the flavor of my coffee and the warmth of the mug. And I look outside at the blue sky. Or you do it like when I get in the car on my way home from work. So there's lots of ways to do mindful pause. It's a really simple thing you can do. And then of course, just being present in the moment. So it's the whole idea of like mindful, you can be mindful dishwashing, right? You're feeling the warmth of the water, the suds. I'm not saying you need to do this all the time, but it can be self-care to try to do this just a little more often and be more in the present moment. Mindful chats with your teen, where you are in the moment with them. And practice is why they call it a practice, because it's not always easy to do. And the more you do it, the more you sort of train your brain to do it. So how do you fit self-care into your busy life? Just a couple ideas. It works best as a routine, whether it's a morning routine or an evening routine or a middle of the day routine, whatever kind of thing, that you just build it in like you brush your teeth, right? And there's lots of habit building ideas, ways to build routines. That's a whole nother presentation. But just, it's not something you have to like think through every time. And especially those in the moment regulating tools, you want to kind of know which ones work for you and that you like, because you won't remember them, especially if your anxiety is getting high. Just positive self-talk, like that thing about self-care isn't selfish. And this is for my kids too. And like, I'm worth this, right? And that's not like, sometimes people don't like the mantras or the positive affirmations. Some people love them and that's great. But like, I'm not saying you have to go in the mirror and say like, I am amazing and I can take care of, like, it's just like true things, right? I am worth taking care of myself, right? And you just remind your brain and yourself. And then putting it into your calendar if you want, especially if it's something that you're saying like, this is important enough to put in my calendar, and make it, prioritize it. And instead of having it be the first thing to go, have it be one of the last things, right? And shrink it. If you need to shrink it. If you usually take a 40-minute walk and things are crazy and you just need to take a 10-minute walk. These are just some like little like template kind of things that I like, that can be helpful for some people. Again, this is similar to the that self-care wheel I showed you that was filled in. It's a way to kind of like check in a bigger way. Like, not, instead of checking in the moment, this is like, let me check in on how I am right now. And again, for the wellness wheel, you can find lots of examples of the wellness wheel online. And you can get rid of some of those categories if they're not important to you. But the idea is that instructions will tell you most of them are pretty much the same. You're sort of like marking where you are on 0 to 10 on each category. So then you connect the line. So it might be like a really zigzaggy line. It doesn't have to be all smooth, because you're not always going to be even in all those areas. And maybe you don't even care about being even on all those areas, but it's just a visual. Where am I? Oh, I'm low here and I want to be higher, or I'm low here and that's fine for me right now. And then there's so many examples, but I just like this other example. It's a little bit different, is Designing Your Life, which is two professors from the Stanford Design Lab, wrote this book called Designing Your Life. And now they've written Designing Your Life for Work that I really like. And they use this dashboard idea. And their big thing is like, it's not about being 100% balanced all the time. It's about being able to see where you are, see where you want to pay attention to, like maybe, play is low on the dashboard, and you could use whatever categories you want. Like, these are their categories. Maybe play is low because, I'm trying to get a certification and the exam is this week and I'm just like, not going to play right now. And that's okay, but it's just being aware of it. And that's also just like, is what I'm doing sustainable? So those are just some fun ways to think about it if it's helpful to you. And then I couldn't resist putting in a slide about self-compassion. I know this has a lot of words on it, so I'm glad this is going to be shared with you. But self-compassion is this really powerful thing that we really didn't used to talk about. It started to be researched by this researcher, Kristen Neff, out of University of Texas. She's like the self-compassion person, who just started to find like all these benefits of self-compassion for coping and just wellness, resilience, and it's important because it's different than what we kind of think about of like self-worth, right? Or self-esteem. It's not necessarily about like thinking you're great. It's just like being kind to yourself. Like, maybe you did mess up. Maybe you did say the mean thing, or you should have done this or whatever. Like, you did mess up. You're just like you would do a friend. Like, you messed up. It's hard. Like, you'll do better. And like a little touch on the shoulder. Like, she talks about touch, how we touch other people to comfort them, and how we can do that to ourselves. And so if you're interested in this at all, selfcompassion.org is like her website. And there's just lots of exercises. And it's just like a really beautiful, powerful idea that we sometimes forget to be kind to ourselves. And it feels good, and it has a lot of broader implications, and it's a good lesson for your child to learn. And this is just, again, on the self-compassion. We won't do this on the selfcompassion.org website. She has lots of exercises you can try and some audio. And like, this is just about writing out, like, how would you getting yourself to think it through? Like, I'm treating myself this way. Well, how would I treat a friend? And how can I bring that more to myself? So something to try if you're interested. And then and then I wanted to like segue into like, okay, so you're doing all this self-care, and then how do you move that out more broadly? Like, obviously all those things are impacting your family, because we know that your self-care impacts your family and influences your teens' wellness. But like, how do you actually literally move it to your family? And I like the idea of making it like a family value, that like if you did a vision board or whatever with your family, you would have that on there, like taking care of yourself and wellness. And so I think this one I really like. I just think we need to talk out loud about these things in front of our teens, right? So we do all kinds of things that we don't talk out loud about. And I'm not saying you have to talk out loud about everything, but like, oh boy, that was really stressful this week. I'm going to make sure I'm going to take a big hike on Saturday to rejuvenate myself. Or like, I'm going to need to take 10 minutes when I get home, because that really helps me feel better, like be a better dad in the evening. Or, and talk about your mental health struggles. Like, obviously there's appropriateness, right? You don't want to be dumping on them everything, but like, if you are not doing well, if you are having some kind of mental health struggle, and maybe that's depression, maybe that's anxiety, maybe that's not maybe it's grief. Maybe it's like you're just going through a hard time because you lost someone important to you, or, but it's like, just, if you don't talk to them about it, then they don't necessarily think they can talk to you about it. And also they're guessing, right? And they're guessing like, what's going on with mom? And maybe it's because I got that D in math that she seems so sad, right? So, and then being honest with them, being vulnerable. So you model that, right? And you also create a deeper connection with them, right? Like it's a tough week for me with X and Y and Z, and I'm going to need more help with, with taking care of the dog, or I'm not going to be able to get to this. And so it's just like having that honest conversation, not pretending that you can do it all, and pushing through all the time, inviting them to join, and they will say no, and join into your wellness and self-care efforts. And they will say no sometimes, depending on your kid, and they will say yes. And it will still be important to ask them. I used to ask and ask and ask my son, and he never really wanted to do stuff when he was a teenager. But it still mattered to him that I asked, and that I wanted to connect, and I wanted to include him. And so then if we take family, and then we kind of just go a little deeper into teens, it's just keeping those doors open, right, to those conversations. Don't assume, use that beginner's mind. If you're going to tell them you can talk to me about stuff, then you need to help them feel they can really talk to you about stuff. And they won't if you're freaking out when they tell you about their friend's depression, or you tell them you're really sad about something and they say, oh, you're not sad. Or, like you have to keep that door open, beginner's mind, not guessing what's going on with them, being willing to do it. And then just like making those check-ins, the emphasis on balance and self-care, just like a normal thing in your family, kind of part of the family values or culture. I like family meetings. They can be tricky with teens, and I have a blog post about that. But if you can do it, it can be really nice to have like regular check-ins, so they don't feel like ambushed all the time with like, how are you? So how are we doing? All right, we're doing okay.
And we did get one question.
Okay. All righty.
I'll just read it. It says, how should I respond if they ask me what they should do? I think they're probably meaning if the teen asks me what they should do, if they cannot help me when you talk to them about your issues. So I guess if I had an issue and shared it with my teen.
Yeah. So it's a hard question, right? Because I can understand that it's like, you want to find this balance where like, you don't want to tell them what they can do that feels like your wellness is their responsibility. And so that might even be something you overtly just say, like, I love that you're asking and that you care about me and you want to help. And it's not, I'm getting help in A, B, C ways, but also, hey, you know what? Can you think of a few things that they could do that would be nice? As just a model of just how people who love each other support each other. Can you think of like, it's not your responsibility. I'm getting help from ABC. I love that you care so much. I know it's been a hard time. And it might be really helpful if you could take on that dog walk in the morning for me, or if like, just a little bit more time, your sister just really wants a lot of attention, I'm not, not like you're going to burden them, but like little things you can ask them to do. Like on Fridays, I wonder if you could take her to the park. Would that be possible? And so it's like, it's kind of like this balance, right? Because you don't want to say like, you can't help me at all, because that's just not how we are with people we love, right? And also you want to reassure them that like, even though you're struggling with whatever you're struggling with, you're getting help from other adults and professionals that you need. And what they can offer you is like loving support that people that in families give each other. Does that make sense?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not like there's one, like I said in the very beginning, it's not like there's one right answer. So I just like not like every single minute of the day or every time you say, hey, how are you, that you have to be like having this deep conversation, but like you want to again like open the door to like, I really actually do want to know how you are. And so like Mood Meter is one that's from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, from this ruler program that they use in schools that, and here in Connecticut is a lot. I don't know if it's national, but it's kind of like having the kids check in, not just on mood, but energy level. And then they kind of fit whatever zone you're in, has different like actual feelings words, so that help kids like identify more their feelings. That's really more complicated. And I'm not saying you should have that up in your house unless maybe your kid's school does it. But it's just the idea of checking in. How are you doing really? Something simpler is you might have seen this in some schools. They use like the zones of regulation. It's green, yellow, red. Green is sort of like, I'm calm and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling rested. I'm thinking clearly. And red is like, I'm kind of emotional, lizard brain, maybe sad, maybe angry, maybe emotional. And yellow is kind of like, I'm kind of in between, And so they use this in schools, but I've had some families use this successfully, or even couples use this successfully, where it's like just having that idea and even having a red, yellow, green light in the house. And it's like, then, you could get in the habit of just being like, I come home and I'm just in red today. And so that kind of signals everybody like, okay, this isn't the great night to like dump stuff on mom or ask her for the 15th time about going to that party, or maybe I'm going to do it. Maybe the partner says, I'm going to do a little more tonight. And if a teen comes home and they're red zone every single day, then you're alerted to something more needs to happen. This is just like a quick, easy kind of code way to check in without going into it, but like recognizing that you have those days and how can we help each other, and we really do care how you're feeling. I was telling Julie that I have such a hard time with these broad topics, so I hope I'm not throwing too much at you. And again, you're going to get the slideshow after, so don't feel like you have to like deeply understand everything. Not that it's that complicated, but I really like this analogy that Lisa D'Amour, I don't know if any of you guys know her, but she's a good one to follow as well. Lisa D'Amour, she's a psychologist. She wrote a couple of books about Under Pressure, about girls and anxiety, and Untangled, which is about like raising girls, both really wonderful. And she's just got a really nice presence. And she does this analogy about teens and stress, like weightlifting, right? So like, it's not bad to weightlift and progressively lift bigger weights and have really big goals, but like you have to do it in a careful way, and you have to leave time for rest. And in a similar way, teens can manage a lot. They're amazing. They can do a lot. They can have high achieving, things they want to do, big goals, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, they need recovery time, right? They need to know that recovery time is okay, and they need recovery time. And so where's your teen's recovery time? Just like, I like these things that can kind of give you a frame for it. And like, that's great that you're taking all those AP classes and you want to try for these competitive schools and you want to play soccer, and like, okay, like, how are you going to take care of yourself? Where's your recovery time? And maybe they'll be like, well, that's my Saturday night playing video games. And then you keep an eye on the yellow, red, green. Is that enough recovery time? So it's just this kind of like way of, again, it's the checking in. It's like the keeping an eye, but that's a nice frame. And she's a good one. She even has like a course on her website and stuff. So I really recommend, some handouts and stuff. So, and this is another resource that I really like, Challenge Success. They're like a Stanford affiliated nonprofit that talks about, like, you see the success is upside down on the handout. They want you to think about this. They want you to challenge ideas of success, have conversations about it. That's one of their bigger motives. But this particular handout I like because it's about wellness and self-care, and a way to frame it, playtime, downtime, family time. And again, if it helps to have that frame of ways to think, and playtime is obviously going to be different for a teen than it is going to be for like a 7-year-old or something. And then they have a time wheel activity on their website too, that again is a way, not that it needs to be perfectly balanced, right? But it's just like looking at it, like being aware, thinking about it. Maybe I'm giving up a little sleep right now because I have, you know, my championship, whatever game. You can tell I'm not really a sports person. But okay, is that sustainable? Then next week I'm going to get back to it or whatever. It's just keeping that balance. Not that everyone has to have all of it. Oh, I realized after I did this picture should have been like multiple paths, because what Challenge Success talks about is, you know, there's lots of paths to healthy futures. And again, we want our kids to see a path to a meaningful future. And so talking about success, values around success, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to them? Being open that they may think of it differently, and letting them kind of take the lead and envision different paths. And that can take some pressure off you too, and can be self-care to you too, because, you know, we kind of like just push through and we want to get our kid to here or there. And it's like kind of pausing and having these kind of conversations with teen can be really healthy and also really interesting. How are we on time? I'll do just a couple more minutes and then we'll just see if there's any questions, since I think
I've welcomed people to put their questions in the chat. So please just keep going. This is great.
Yeah. Okay, good. I know. It's hard sometimes to do questions when there's a chat versus in person, but listening, you know, in that first slide from the report, from the Making Caring Common report, teens want to know you're listening. And so it's just like the frame of all of it really is that you're connected and you're listening. And there's lots of ways to do that. And these are just some top tips, you know, validating the feelings doesn't mean you agree with it, but you're like, I hear you. You're really disappointed I said no about the party. Still no, maybe, but you're validating the feeling and it helps. Acknowledging their point of view, even if it's totally different than yours, right? This one I really like, and I think can be really helpful for your self-care and theirs, because sometimes, and as a coach, this happens to me too, sometimes like someone starts talking about the problem and you immediately are like, fix it, fix it. They call it the writing reflex in motivational interviewing, which is a coaching style. It's like, we want to fix it, right? But sometimes the kids just your teen just wants to share. And sometimes you feel that way too. So it's like, do you want suggestions, or is it just listening that you need? Right? It kind of just clarifies.
You want me to sit with you? Or you want another show?
Oh, somebody needs to mute. Yeah, so these are tips you'll see when you get the slides, but it's just really kind of, some of it's common sense, but some of it's good to have reminders. And you can still do all these kinds of, you know, really good listening skills, making sure your teen feels heard, opening the door for them so they're more likely, like there's this article that I linked to in the slides, be the kind of parent your child chooses to talk to. And that does not mean you have to be a permissive parent or a lenient parent. It means you have to be a parent that has the door open to them. And when they do talk to you, they know you'll listen. And I just think that like the frame too, I said that listening was the frame, but I think this is also a big frame. And I like this quote from this psychologist Brad Sachs, who wrote this book more towards young adults, but it's just, no amount of education, care, or effort is going to inoculate you or your teen young adult against disappointment and disillusionment, challenge, and complexity. And that may feel like a sad thing to think about, but I don't see it as sad. I just think it's like, if we're always thinking it's got to be great for ourselves or our kids, it's not. There's hard times, there's ups and downs. As a parent of young kids, young adults between 20 and 30, there's lots of ups and downs, and there's ups and downs still to come for me. So that's pretty much it. I know Julie's going to send you the slides, and you can reach me at info@parentingthebigkids.com. I have some, you know, coaching services, and I'm happy to, like, you can ask me a question about the presentation or something too. I'm a social worker as well. So resources are my thing. So I have lots and lots of ideas about resources for parents. So I think that's it for me. Anybody have any questions they want to put in the chat? Go ahead and do that now.
Thank you so much. I guess you got through it quicker than we expected.
I know.
That was really good. I don't know if there's any that you want to go back to, or and people can
Well, if you want to use if no one has any questions and you want to use the last few minutes, I told you in the beginning that I have this little quirk about presentations where I always add a few after the last slide.
Sounds good.
To buffer myself, because I have a hard time with timing.
Yeah, well,
I'll run through a couple of them then.
Everybody's still with you. So
yeah, it's quiet on the questions.
Let's see. We've got a couple.
Oh, okay.
Not one. My kids love to vent to me, and sometimes I have a hard time handling all the negativity. Do you have recommendations on self-care in this case? So venting their negative.
Yeah, that's such a good question because, right, it's like we're talking about listening. And it's like also sometimes your self-care is like not to listen. So, a couple things, again, no perfect answer here, but a couple things come to mind. One would be that, like, as much as we talk about listening, it can also be good role modeling to say, and again, that red, yellow, green light can be a good kind of frame for it. You know, I love that you come and talk to me. Like, you know, I'm just a little tapped out today. So let's just talk for 10 minutes and then I'm going to go, you know, take a shower. I know dad's happy to chat too, you know, so like, I know that can be tricky depending on, but it's always good to share some of that and see how you can try to even baby step sharing that. And that can become really important too, as they become young adults too, and adults, that you don't want to be the only one for that. That psychologist Lisa D'Amour talks about, like, how parents become the emotional dumping ground, moms especially. And like, it's okay to set some limits on that, because you're then teaching them, you're modeling self-care by saying, like, I'm here for you and also I'm here for me. And you're also kind of helping them learn other ways, right? When you encourage them to talk to dad or grandmom, it's not dumping them, it's encouraging them to have a broader support network. And that can be really important when they like go away to college, right? It's good if they have more people and they're willing to go find other ways to get support. And then, of course, it could be something where you also could use some of those regulating skills to say, like, you know, I know you're feeling so jangled right now, or whatever the word is teens like to use. And what I find helps me, you know, is some deep breathing, or I really like this guided meditation I found, or do you want to take a walk? And like, kind of, again, that's kind of like inviting them to your self-care. And also, like, I mean, it's just, I think it's fair to be honest sometimes with teens and just say, like, I'm in the red today and this is overwhelming me and I'm here for you. So let's figure out how we can like both get our needs met, you know?
That sounds good. We got another question. Sometimes when parents are inconsistent, it creates confusion for the kids to know what is normal and what is not. How do you handle that? Parents being inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, well, I mean, if you're the parent, you can try to be a little more consistent, but like, I mean, that's also, it can be confusing, but also it's part of life. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by inconsistent, but like, it's part of life for them to understand that, like, some days are hard and mom's a little stressed out some days, and sometimes grandmom's in the hospital and so dinner's not on the table, and like those kind of inconsistencies I think are like part of that ups and downs we talked about. And
yeah, so the red light, green light.
Yeah, and also just like that's, but if it's like you being, if it's you or maybe someone's trying to say a partner's being inconsistent, that's a bit different. And so like I think, you know, consistency as a general rule is good, but like it's not like teens can't understand that things aren't always going to be exactly aren't always going to be consistent for different various reasons. Yeah, and if I don't answer the question, you can email me at that info@parentingtobigkids and help me understand a little bit more what you're looking for.
I'll put that in the chat, that your website. We've just got 5 more minutes. I don't know if there was anything else. I don't see any other questions. Just a lot of thank yous for the
Oh,
great presentation.
you're very welcome, everybody. You want me to run through the last slides real quick just to see if there's anything that resonates, or what do you think?
For sure. Maybe
All
just take one or two more.
See what I threw on the end. I don't even remember. It was when I realized I had so many slides, I was like started moving some to the very end because I was like, oh, I'm a quote lover. So I was just, part of self-care for you and for your child is acceptance. And that could be acceptance of limits, acceptance of situations, acceptance of the fact that maybe your teen isn't exactly what you wanted them to be, which is fair to feel, not terrible or shameful to feel. But they need, I like this quote about so often parents want to play Edward Scissorhands and start pruning their kids like trees. The reality is your tree has just begun to grow, even as a teen, and you don't even know what kind of tree it is. Maybe it's not a sports tree. And that's actually one that comes up a lot, to be honest, wanting kids to be play soccer like dad did, or be in drama like mom did, or something, and accepting that. So and then always Mr. Rogers has good quotes. The greatest gift we can give to anybody is the gift of our honest self, right? And that may speak to some of the things we talked about. Like, it's always tricky with a parent to be your honest self. So obviously you have to be mindful of your role and your impact on your child, but also like to be your authentic self. It's a pretty powerful thing you can give to your kids. This is from my article that I wrote in Grown and Flown, which I don't know if I put the link here, but we could maybe share that link. It's just teens need self-care. Parents of teens need self-care. And it's just like, teens will want to put you in the box. And so as they get older, and you can kind of be your authentic self, and just, again, it connects to that meaningful life, right? Help them see you as more than just the parent. Can be like really powerful for them and for you. And some parents don't do that at all, put themselves in a box, and that's great. And some parents do it a lot because they have some, again, beliefs they bring into parenting about what they need to be and what they can't be or what they should do. And those can be great, those can be fine, but you just want to check them. I just want to be like aware of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems like a good place to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Laura,
Thanks, Julie, for having me. It was fun. All right.
I can tell people are really appreciated in the chat. So
good. I'm glad.
And thank you for your generosity in letting us record this and share your slides. You're just going to help a lot of people with this. So thank you.
You're very welcome.